I love the story of the prodigal son, but so often we don't see the full picture of what Jesus is saying here. Have you ever wondered why Scripture tells us that Jesus was crucified before the foundation of the world? Why before the foundation of the world? The answer is an obvious one. When God decided to make the world, part of the plan for his creation would involve entering into himself and reconciling his creation, man, to himself. For there to be a reconciliation, there would have to have been a falling out, a tragic event that would need fixing, need healing. The story of the prodigal son serves to show many aspects of this event. There is a son who lives at home. He experiences love from his father, and yet this experience of love is not enough to keep him at home. He is selfish and wants to live life his way without the control of his father. He wants to break free and live independently. The father, who indeed loves his son, will not and cannot enforce him to stay. That is not love. He lets him go with all the blessings that have been gifted to him as a result of being born into his family. And the son leaves and heads for the bright lights of the city. Good times ahead. Of course, it isn't long, however, before things take a turn for the worse. His money runs out, his friends desert him, and famine comes on the land. The son finds himself with nothing left, and his thoughts turn to a place where things were better, where he knew security and comfort, home. And yet he knows he has acted disgracefully, taking and squandering his family inheritance, bringing shame to his family name. He knows that he has no right to go back as a son. In his desperation, he looks for another way to return. Now, if he can't go back as a son, then what about as a servant? He can work his way back into the household. True, he will never have the same relationship as he had before, but at least he would have food and security of some kind. So, with an empty stomach and fearful of how his father may act when he sees him, he sets off for home. His father, meanwhile, has not stopped being his father. Every parent knows what it is like to see their child acting irresponsibly and doing things that they know are wrong, and yet love cannot stop loving. It cannot be turned off like a tap. It is simply love. And so he waits in hope, knowing that someday his son may remember him and come home, that he may hold the child again in his arms, remembering that little child that once played and ran through the family home. The child that would run to him and shout out "Daddy" and wrap his arms around his legs. The child that he would comfort when he fell and bruised himself. The child that brought him so much joy. The child that he could never stop loving. And so he waits and watches, from sunrise to sunset, hoping that he will see the familiar figure once again come through his door. Then one day it happens. The light is beginning to fade and they're finishing up for the day. The father looks away in the direction that he knows his son is and sees a figure that's far away in the distance. There is a familiarity about the walk, the stance. Instantly, the father knows it is his son, his child. He is home, he has come back. Every fibre of his being rises with elation, excitement. He cannot contain himself, but runs to the approaching figure. The son has seen him. Sure enough, it is his dad, and he's running towards me. What is he thinking? Is he really cross? What is he going to do? I will explain to him, he says to himself. I will tell him that I only want to be a servant. I will not embarrass him by wanting anything more. After all, how can he accept me after what I have done? The father falls upon the son and kisses his neck, throwing his arms around him. The son, in his confusion as to what is happening, tries to tell him his well-rehearsed speech about being a servant, but the father is having none of it. I love you, he says, in word and in action, the kisses falling on his neck over and over. My son has returned, he proclaims. We are the prodigal sons and daughters. We all, like sheep, went astray. We wandered into far-off lands and did our own thing and spent ourselves. The gifts of life that God has given us, we spent them on empty and vain things. Then the famine came, the storms of life, which are never accidental, but almost always a cause for us to look to our Father as a place of security and belonging. But we are not disobedient children that are afraid of our dad, and so believe that if we act well enough, if we can serve him in some way, then we could be accepted in some measure. And so we return, cap in hand, and he falls on our necks and kisses us. He tells us with his loving actions that he loves us, that we are his sons, his daughters, and we always will be. And now the son is different. He understands love in a new way. Love is revealed in its fullness, in the forgiveness and desire for reconciliation. The Son is different because he has received grace, the action force of true love that changes a man. If the Son had stayed and acted like the elder brother, he would not have understood grace and never experienced the forgiveness of his Father. He would always have taken for granted the gifts that being a family member brought with it. But now he is changed. Now we are changed. We have been loved and forgiven by God. The sacrifice of God's own Son that was laid down before the foundation of the world in readiness for our return, so that our Father, our Abba, would one day throw himself upon our necks and kiss us over and over and tell us we are his children and always will be. Thank you for listening. God bless you.